This is a tremendous class, just the best. I'm so honored to say hello and welcome you to
post-production.
All right, we are going to go on to week 6. Main thing we're going to go over is some dodging and burning with curves, right? Dodging and burning, archaic darkroom terms, meaning selectively making parts of it lighter, parts of it darker. We'll talk about masking pixel layers a little bit. And with masking pixel layers in mind, we'll go through 4 different methods of selecting specific parts of your image, which you can then use to mask them off or mask everything else off. So we will no longer be erasing pixels. It was terrible. Sorry about that. But there you go. So let's go ahead and dive in. And in the handout for this week, which I'll go ahead and bring up here. In the handout for this week, I go through the Wacom brush thing a little bit, but we did that in the video last week, so I'm not going to go over it again. You can go back through that and review it. Again, we'll have that test every week until you all get it right. All right, so let's go ahead on to masking our adjustment layers, and for that I'm going to open up this demo 01 file, close out some of these windows I don't need, and in fact I'm going to reset Brad's default workspace. That's why I save workspace, people. So this is a picture of the uncle and niece, or like it's the great uncle of the niece. I don't know. Friends of mine, family. So this picture was taken at a party, and they were pretty close up, and I got more exposure on the niece than I wanted, and I got less exposure on the uncle than I wanted. So what I'm going to do is try and adjust that. Now, if we adjust just the exposure, right, we can make the whole thing lighter or the whole thing darker, but I can't make parts of it lighter and parts of it darker in the same image. So we are going to do that with a curves layer and some masking. Remember last week we did masking on a black and white layer. Same exact principle, but on a curves adjustment layer. So following along in our handout, right there, very exciting. The first thing I'm going to do when I do any kind of adjustment that I know is going to be sort of masked off, I'm going to go ahead and draw a box roughly around the area that I'm going to be trying to adjust. Now, why do I do that? Well, the reason I do that, let me deselect that, Command D. If I went ahead and, so don't do this, but if I went ahead and just made a curves layer and was like, okay, well, how much do I want to adjust it? It's hard for me to judge if I'm adjusting it a reasonable amount, because while maybe he looks a little bit like I can read his features a little bit more easily, now she looks terrible and super blown out. So by drawing that initial box with a marquee tool, so M for marquee, draw that box around his face. I do that before I make that curves adjustment layer. Here we go, curves adjustment layer. Because I have an active selection, when I make an adjustment layer, it automatically creates a mask. if I have an active selection when I create a mask, put that in the back of your mind, it'll come back when we talk about pixel layers. If I have an active selection when it creates a mask, it is going to use that active selection to mask off whatever it is. So I had that active selection and I created a curves layer, and so now, right, my curves layer is only affecting that little box because that is the area that has, like, is showing from my curves adjustment layer. So I can just focus on that and not worry about everything else looking crazy. So I'm going to bring him up a little bit more than I anticipate wanting in the final adjustment. Why do I do that? Well, because I'm going to be brushing it in, right? And if I have a little bit more possible adjustment, I can go up and sort of stop just short of that. If I didn't go a little bit past where I'm thinking would be a good idea, maybe as I'm brushing it in, I realize, oh, I do actually want some more. And I wouldn't have that additional wiggle room, right? I can always pull it back after we're done. All right, so I have drawn that box, right? Had that active selection, made a new curves layer, and we can see, right, if I hit that slash, that I have everything masked off except for the face. Just a reminder, you'll notice that when I did hit that slash, right, that is really opaque. At some point, I adjusted my mask setting to be 100%. Not a great idea. Don't do it. So to fix that, I went to Channels, selected that mask, and double-clicked on it. And you can there change both the opacity and also, if you want, the color, which is helpful if you are masking off an image that is, say, mostly red. Hard to tell if it's masked off or not if your mask is also red. All right. So I've made that adjustment, and now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I'm here on the thumbnail. I'm going to pull this over here. Make sure I'm there in the thumbnail, and I want to just get rid of that stupid rectangle that I made, right? I don't want to keep it there. I mean, you can even see the edges of it right there, right? That is not good masking. I just want to clear it all off so I can start over and brush it back in. So we're going to do that by clicking on that thumbnail, double checking over here that I've got black as my background, and then Command A to select all, and just hit delete to clear it out. Command D, deselect. So now if I hit that slash button to hide and show my mask, you can see that the whole thing is hidden, right? So if I turn my curves layer on and off, no change, right? The adjustment is there, but none of it is showing up. So now I can go ahead and brush it back in. So I'm going to hit B on the keyboard to get the brush tool. I'm hitting my square brackets to make my brush a little bit bigger. I'm going to come up here to flow, and this is an important difference between what we're doing now and what we did with the black and white adjustment layer. With the black and white adjustment layer, we wanted it to be either black and white or in color. With this, I want to slowly be able to build up this adjustment, right? I don't want it to instantly be at 100% of this curves layer the way I wanted it to be at 100% of being black and white. So I'm going to drop my flow down. I use 6%. Why? I don't know. Seems to work for me. I'm going to hit that little folder with a brush in it, come over here and check hardness, 0, spacing very low. That's awesome. I'm going to go check transfer, so make sure it's checked, and then make sure that both opacity and flow are set to pen pressure. There was a little exclamation point that was right there. That was because I hadn't used my Wacom tablet, and so Photoshop was like, pen pressure, there's no tablet attached here. So I just moved the cursor around with the tablet, and Photoshop was like, oh, there it is, and chilled out. Make sure that shape dynamics not turned on. I don't want it to get bigger and smaller. I can't really tell how it's changing as I'm working, so that doesn't help me. And yeah, I think that is good. All right. So again, I'm making sure that I'm on the layer mask. You can see it has that little rectangle, white rectangle around it. Again, if I were here on the main image and I started painting, right, that's not good. Smurf is not what we're going for. All right, so back here to my curves layer, which I will rename, make sure I'm on that layer mask, make sure that I have white paint. Remember D for default. That gives me black and white. If I hit X, switches my foreground background color. Right now I want white. And I'm just going to gently start scribbling it in on there. Get his hand a little bit too, since that's roughly the same distance. Bring those up a little bit. Now, if I'm doing a good job, I shouldn't really be able to tell that I'm making an adjustment until I go back here and turn it on and off. Right? If it's subtle enough that it's hard for me to tell as I'm doing it, it is certainly subtle enough that your viewer is not going to notice it. Right? They're not going to notice the boundaries of where this adjustment is. If I just came in here with a solid, like magic marker, Sharpie, Donald Trump signature going across there, this like hard, solid brush, that's going to be really noticeable, right? Big adjustment, hard edge, abrupt transition. What we're doing, bringing it in slowly, soft edge, scribbling to slowly build it up, that means it's going to be a gradual transition with a soft edge. You're not going to be able to notice it as much. So that looks pretty good. Yeah, that's fine. Remember, right, like the hazards of adjusting skin tone, right? We don't want to do the whole Time Magazine, O.J. Simpson racist crap. So when you're working on skin tones, be thoughtful. What I'm doing here is a pretty minor adjustment, and I am not worrying about that. Okay, so I'm going to take that curves layer, I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to rename it Lighten Midtones Face, and Man's Face. If I remembered his name, I would use his name, but this is, whatever, gosh, 15 years ago? Don't remember his name. Okay, so that is good, right? Turn it off, turn it on, check it out. Now we're going to go over here and work on her a little bit. Now, the thing that I am the most concerned about is bringing this dress down, right? I'm going to bring her face down a little bit too. It feels a little bit sort of overexposed, fried, deer in the headlights right now. So I want to bring some of those highlights down. But I'm mostly worried about how this dress is rendering. So I'm going to draw my box around that, right? So here, I'll just start it over again. Deselect, Command D. I grab the marquee tool with the M on the keyboard. You can also think of it as marching ants. Draw a little box around what I am interested in. Only then do I come down here and make a curves layer. And I'm going to make an adjustment that is perhaps a little bit beyond what I might think I need. Okay, that seems all right. Okay, so I've made that adjustment. It's there with that heavy rectangle. I don't want to have that heavy rectangle, right? And don't think that you can like scribble it away, because you will eventually miss a corner, print it out, see the corner, feel stupid, have to pay to get another print made. So select all, Command A, make sure I have black paint in the background, and hit delete. Command D, deselect. I can always go ahead and hit that slash button, right? That's the slash that's right above the return key, just to confirm that everything on there is black. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab my brush, make sure I have white paint, and now again, I'm painting in here to show that layer. showing that layer is going to mean that my effect, or the effect of my curves layer, is visible, and I'm going to bring those tones down. Something else that you can think about is your brush size, right? So having a little tiny brush is going to mean that you are more likely to be visible as you make those strokes going back and forth across this larger area. Bigger brush, not going to be as noticeable. So let's just check that a little bit. That seems pretty good. I'm going to erase a little bit of that on her arm. I feel like the highlight on her arm is now maybe a little bit too dark. To get rid of it, right? Remember, the black paint hides it, white paint shows it. I just hit X on the keyboard to switch from painting with white paint to painting with black paint. Make my brush a little bit smaller, and then scribble that on the arm. I'm going to check my mask by hitting that slash key. Seems all right. This is another example of where it's a little hard to tell. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down the Option key while I click on that mask, and that's going to show me it in black and white. So it looks like pretty good. Arm's not selected. Decent coverage of the dress. Grab that brush again, make sure I've got white paint. Looking down, I have black paint. Hit X. And there's a little bit that was missing in here. Okay. All right, I think that is pretty good. Now, one thing you may notice when you are making an adjustment to make a localized area brighter or darker, you may have some shifts in saturation. If I rename my layer, geez, darken girl's dress and face. If I turn that on and off, right, we can see that the skin tone gets a little bit more saturated. And I don't really know what the mechanism for this is, but I do know that there are times where I will bring something down and the color will get a little bit more intense. So easy way to solve that, right? I'm there on my layer. Stretch it out a little bit. I'm going to make a hue saturation layer. I'm going to clip it so that it is just applying to things that have been affected by me darkening them in that layer. And I'm going to go ahead and drop the saturation just a little bit. You can see all the way. That's too much. That seems better to me. Again, these are pretty minor adjustments. Most of the time, hopefully you're not making a big adjustment. If you do have something that is huge, right, you can mask things off in Camera Raw, right? You can go into Lightroom, do a mask there, you're going to have a little bit more wiggle room. But here, this seems to work pretty well. It's subtle enough that I don't think anyone is going to feel that I have changed skin tones, more just that I have balanced out an exposure that before was a little bit too bright in one part and too dark in another. Now both of them are a little bit more accurately exposed. So there you go. That is dodging and burning, or localized adjustment, making things lighter and darker. Rename that layer. And I think, whoops, sorry, I think we are good. So we'll come back and look a little bit at masking off pixel layers.